Hi, the bits that are needed for doing the alterations I'm going to do are now here. I have a new shock absorber because my rear shock absorber was losing its compression dampening and the rebound dampening, so it was coming up too quick, which was making the rear wheel skip as I was trying to put a lot of power through it. So I couldn't launch as hard as I wanted to, which brought the 60 foots down, brought the times down, etc, etc. So I've got a new shock absorber purposely made for drag racing by Hagon Shocks. They've got me weight in that, and we had to do some measurements to, might show you as we go along, to give them the travel I want. So no matter how hard I launch now, I will not hit the underside as long as I do not mess with the dog bones from here in. I also have gone and got a better battery for the bike while we're running with the heaters. I've gone and got a Super B battery, which are not cheap at all and mainly recommended for racing. I've gone for a bigger one than what was recommended for the bike because of the electronics that I'm running on the bike. It will fit the compartment, which is a bonus. With lithium batteries, obviously they're smaller in height, so I managed to get a taller battery to fit the compartment, which will give me more oomph and that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit the shock now, so I'll show you exactly what I had to sort of do and go from there. Thank you very much. As you can see here, this is the standard shock, but it was revalved for a bit more drag racing, and the bottom screw is the rebound dampening. Now that was basically coming to its end of its life. I've had one made by Hagon, which at the bottom again you see the screw there at the bottom near my little finger, which is a rebound dampening. We don't particularly need any compression dampening because we want it to go down quick anyway, just come up slow. They have said, look, there's that much rebound dampening there that I could lock the shock up, so basically it will not come back up. So don't particularly want to do that. So it's going to be, once it's fitted, it's going to be a bit of a trial and error of whereabouts I want the compression or the rebound dampening to be, if you know what I mean. So we'll do a bit of testing, but I'll show you now in the video of what I had to do. I had to take the rear shock out. As you see from the bottom here, it's out from here and it's out from the top. And I set the wheel where I wanted it to be when I'm, you know, how low I wanted it to launch. So it's going to be at that height from the underside at full length. And then what I had to do is lift the rear wheel up, lift this up to where I want it here, and then that works out the travel I wanted. You have to measure that on eyelet to eyelet on the shock. So that's what's been done. So this shock should be pretty much close to that where it is now, and when fully compressed it should not touch the underneath. That's the idea. So I'm going to go and fit this now anyway. Hi everyone, from the last part of this video I was saying I was going to be putting the new rear shock on. It is now on. I'll show you. I've put me 2.5 pound nitrous bottle back on, rear wheels on with a new tyre, chains on. It's had a pre-lube with this new chain lube I'm trying out, and then I will lube it again when we're pretty much ready to go. I have got the clutch cover off. What a pain that was. The nut has seized on, even though I had the correct size nut and an air gun to try and get it off. Well, it wasn't air, it was actually an electric one first. It wouldn't budge. Rounded the nut eventually, because obviously persistent use with it being an alley nut, it just rounded and rounded and rounded. So I had to grind away a little bit, and I managed to get an air chisel on it to actually get the nut off. Obviously I do have a clutch holding tool as well, which I used, so it wasn't just spinning. So it is now off, the clutch off, the basket's off, because what I wanted to check, what I wanted to do was change the oil pump sprocket, mounting plate and pressure valve, which is underneath the sump, which I haven't took off yet, to upgrade the oil pressure on the bike. Now if you use the standard mounting bracket for the oil pump, you see how thin it is. With the pressure can push it apart a little bit, and because there's no seal on these, it's just basically metal on metal fit, it can push it apart and leak. So we have a billet made one, an APE billet thingy to put on for that, because that side goes over the oil pump, and then the other side the shaft comes out and you've got the sprocket on. But I'm going to show you that now. I've got to take it back off again I'll just put it on loosely for now. I've got to take it back off again to thread lock the bolts. Now they've used red thread lock, which is high strength. Now unfortunately at the moment I haven't got any just normal high strength, but I do have high strength oil resistant. Now because it's within the oil part of the bike, obviously oil pump right where the oil is, I'm going to use that and then put the nuts in and torque them up. So that's the process I'm going to do now, but I'll turn the camera around and show you the other ways. At the moment I've lost my selfie stick, which I normally use with this, so I'm having to do it by hand, so you might have to bear with me if it's a bit, well, it's always shaky. It's Blair Witch style, as someone told me once, but it's all off the cuff. It's all as if you were here in the garage, where I make mistakes as well as everyone else. I will correct if I know where there's a mistake I've done wrong, and if someone else does point out there's a mistake, I will correct it on air the next video I do. Right, I will show you what I have done and show you what I intend to do. As you can see, the shock absorber is in there. As you can also see, there's plenty of adjustments to be able to weaken the spring off as I lose weight and strengthen it up if I gain weight. The spring rate is actually set for my weight with my levers on at 127 kilos. You can also see, as say from the bottom, it's on. There is not much travel from there to there. We reckon there's worked out dampening travel, if we can just about see in there, if it will focus in there, from that shaft in the middle. We have 40 mil of travel. We were going to have 50, but we decided to put 40 because these dog bones are non-standard and it may well lower the bike more than what we expect. I have sort of set him as close as I can possibly get to the standard length. Unfortunately, we're half an inch out from standard length because the coming to the stops either side inside the thread, even though you can see there's enough outside to go a bit more. They are pretty much at the stop on one. That one's not so bad. I could probably take that one off and rotate that round on its own to lower that, but the other side's pretty much like this side. So instead of the headache of doing that, I've left it like that. I've measured them. I've measured from eyelet to eyelet, from this eye, as they call it, to the top one, on what the compressed rate I want and the extended rate I want. And obviously I've done that so it won't hit the underside of the rear when the wheel's at full wheelbase. You can see the nitrous bottle's back in, plumbed in. I've checked that it's no leaks. The heater's on, and what I am planning on doing, I've got two more heaters which are a bit more higher amperage than these ones. I'm going to make connections and probably even use a switch, so I could put a heater on that bottle and it's run off batteries, leisure batteries, to pre-warm that bottle as much as we can. The only problem I've got with that is I don't have gauges on my bottles direct, which is a bit of a pain really. I've got one bottle of these, £2.5 with a gauge on, which is ideal. All right. Now these ones haven't, so for me to check the pressure I have to turn the system on. Now with braided lines, steel braided lines, is if you leave the bottle on, it will slowly seep out through the line. So that's one thing we don't want. So I'll have to be aware of turning it off, and you don't want to leave a heater on it permanently. Get an idea of how long I need it on for. And you don't want it on permanently in case you over pressurize. We need those bottles at 950 psi ish, as close as, because my transducer, which is on the bike, which is here, there, it's got a wire that takes a reading for the pressure for the controller, and that will turn the heaters on if it's below 950 psi, and then turn them off if it's above that. That's when the bike is running. Now I've changed the battery for the Super B 10 BP battery, which is bigger and more powerful than what they recommend standard for these bikes, but because I do run electric heaters, electronic shifter, and I think I was having problems with gear change. Now when I take the sump off to do that pressure thingy, I will check, I'll get in there with the torch on my phone and that, and I will check, see if there's any damage. Now if there is, obviously I won't be going to the next round. It doesn't sound like it, but I need to check. And also another thing I need to check regularly on this bike, because we're putting a lot of torque through the engine, I did have problems with the chain adjuster, which is up here behind the cover here, going to its fully open state and jamming. Now what I need to do is take that chain adjuster off, reset it, and then basically calibrate it just to double check that it hasn't done that. Right, I'll catch up again shortly and I'll show you what I'm doing. Oh, clutch side, sorry. Clutch side, took the basket off. This damage is from a previous thing with the nut locked again. I think it's because of the drag racing. We're putting a lot of force on that, and that is getting hot. Hot at times, as you can see a bit of bluing on the end. And then it almost welds itself to itself. But also I have, because it's a Gen 2 and you have like springs in for the slipper clutch, they've been removed, and we've got a metal plate in there which is done by Brock's to stop movement, side to side movement as when you're launching. Now that particular, it's like a big washer really that's purposely made to fit everything, and the nut fits perfectly inside. That washer I think is also contributing to this issue of the nut being too tight. Now on the Gen 1 models you never had a slipper clutch, so you didn't need it. Now I will check first of all, see if a nut will go on that, and then if not I'll dress that up a bit. This is the new oil pump sprocket. It's slightly smaller than the original one, so it'll turn faster. We don't have to change the other one because what they've done when they've made it, they've made the teeth slightly longer, I think. So even though it's smaller, have they made the teeth longer? But they said I don't have to change that, and I'll show you. I've got it here. So this bit sits on the clutch, in the centre of the clutch, with the bearing. Well, actually no, this locates the clutch. The bearing goes actually on the clutch bit, and it locks into there, and then the clutch turns that, the clutch basket, which is then, the clutch basket's then driven off the crank there. So the clutch basket's driven off the crank there, and then that basket drives this one, which then drives the oil pump. So it doesn't have a chain on this. Now, if you remember rightly, on my Ninja H2, we have a chain from the oil pump to this particular ring because the clutch is higher. The clutch is pretty much up here because it's got like a cassette gearbox. So it has a chain going from there to there, and a guide. Now I always have issues with that, with the guide wearing. Now we think we might go to the bottom of it. We're not sure because at the moment I've stopped working on the H2 to work on this, and also I've got an issue I need to address on that, which I'll do in a separate video. And as you can see, I've got a low sump, and that sump will come off, and I will show you that once I've took that off, the difference between that and a standard sump. That's the reason why I had that different oil cooler fitted. Anyway, I'll get off and I'll show you. I've got to take these nuts off, re-put them in one thread lock, and torque them up. So I'm going to do that, and I'll get back to you. I've just checked the torque settings for those oil pump cover bolts. Now they're saying it's 9.8 Newton meters. Pretty much 10 will do on that. Now, but what it does say in the remarks, it doesn't have locking agents. But if you look carefully, if you can see it without any light getting it, I'm trying to see if I can focus in on that. Come on, bolt, focus in on the bolts. It looks like at the top of it, we do have red locking agents. Now that's not oil. I've checked that properly. If it will focus in on it, it'll be ideal, but it won't focus in on it. I'll turn the camera around and I'll quickly show you that. There we go. It's got red locking agents right at the top. Now this has come out from the factory like that, because that oil pump's never ever been out. Mind you, my engine builder might have done it, but I suppose he knows best. So I'm going to put a little dab of locking agents where that is, even though it doesn't say it in the manual. Because if my engine builder's had all that out, which I presume he's had everything out, he does engines for a living, so there must be a reason for that. Maybe the vibration of the engine in racing particularly, it will slowly work these bolts out if we're not careful, if it's not like the thread locked. So I'm going to put a little touch on anyway. And the locking agent you're going to use is this Loctite 648. It's oil resistant and it's high strength. So that will do the job very kindly. It says somewhere, mind you, the reason why I know this is because I use it on the little leaflet that comes with it. It's underneath there, actually, underneath there. But I checked the website and it's definitely oil resistant. Right, I'll speak to you shortly. Well, I've got the sump off. This is what they call a racing low sump. Basically, it doesn't have on the side view, it doesn't have the drop down where the oil sits. So, and where the oil cooler is now, the sandwich plate on the oil cooler, which is up there, that is where the oil cooler used to be. If we focus it in on it. Now, what we've done is we'll put a adapter plate, an angled bit, sandwich plate on, and then with the oil filter in and out going to that oil cooler, and then the oil filter on the end. Now, the oil filter originally on the 14 went on the sump. As you can see on the sump, because it's not a low sump, there's no space for an oil filter. So these journals, I presume, are designed, well, the oil goes through the oil cooler, but these are got the keeps the pressure going, because obviously you've got the oil pressure gauge here, the thing you want, and then I've got a mechanical oil pressure gauge there. Then we have, this is the oil pressure relief valve. That basically sets what pressure the bike is at. I think normally on a stock bike it's around about 60, I think it's 60 psi per at certain revs. I'm not sure what revs they test it at now, but I believe the new one could take that up to 100 psi or even 120. It's to help with idling more than anything. When if I notice on my oil pressure gauge, when oil's warmed up and it's thinner, the pressure drops quite dramatically to almost like 10-15 psi, which we need it higher than that. So this will run it higher pressure. That's why we've got a special back plate on here, because the pressure is going to be higher. This will increase the pump faster as well. So the pump will go faster, pump more oil, that will hold the pressure, and then that will release the pressure. Well, here we go, here's the instructions. As you see, it says this is a direct replacement for the original pressure valve, and it's designed to create more oil pressure at high RPM, obviously, as well as low. Some people say low. I think the sprocket does it at low. The the original one, 75 psi of maximum pressure. The new billet pressure valve will create between 110 and 115 of pressure. This has been successfully tested in drag racing and daily riding without outstanding results. Designed to help prevent bearing failure from low oil pressure at high RPM. Great for high compression, nitrous or turbo applications. And there's what for, it says like ZX10, it says 2015 there, ZX14 or ZX14R 2016, Concours, Wilkins as well. So this is the little device, made of billet aluminum, as the Americans say, or aluminium as we say over here, and that will replace the other one that is in there now. So I'm going to do that now. Hi all, it's getting late now. I had to stop to do some stuff in the house, but anyway, the sump is on. The oil pressure relief, I think it's called the relief valve, which obviously increases the pressure, is on. The sprocket for the oil pump is on to make it spin quicker, and the back plate is on. I say sump is on. I've got a magnetic sump plug now, which is like a lock wire as well. But I've got a copper washer. I'm just put a copper washer on it, but I need to use a spanner to tighten it up, because where it is there's an oil line in the way, so I couldn't get a socket on anyway. Right, but anyway, I'm going to show you this clutch, lock-up clutch. Unfortunately, I've got a standard clutch basket because my one broke, and I'm in the process of trying to find somewhere in the UK that can sort it out for me, because it was a billet basket, you see, so it was a lot stronger. At the moment I've got the standard basket on, but the standard inner, no, know I've got the race inner, which has got extra little oil journals on the inner drum to be able to lubricate the clutch a bit more, and the end cap with which springs go on, that is different because it's got hardened little buttons in it, as they call it. But I'll turn around and show you. It basically works where the faster the rear wheel goes, which is the output shaft, then the harder it locks up, because it is on the input shaft here, but on the not the engine side of the input shaft. The engine side is the one where the engines, if the engine revs up, then it'll lock more, but it's not on that one, it's on the inner one, so it'll all go by how fast the rear wheel will go. If you spin it up and the wheel goes quicker, it will lock up more. So that's a bit of a thing we have to try and work out with settings with the lockup of how much slip you want off the line. I've set it up so I've got standard springs in it, like a standard clutch. It'll operate off the line, and the lockup bits only work when you get further down the line and your wheels going faster, which puts more pressure against the clutch to potentially not let it slip at high RPM and high speeds. I'll show you what's what, and the reason why I've done that, I should explain, is the springs they sent with it, with the kit, are way too small for this application. So I think they're either off another motorcycle, maybe Hayabusa or whatever. They're only very small, but they fall through the holes on the lockup, because this is a Gen 2. It had a slipper clutch on it, so what it has is the inner bit, the inner drum, if you lock the back wheel, will rotate. Well, actually I think it goes that way, will rotate and then push the clutch away from the engine, so then it'll give it a slip, so it's supposed to minimise locking up the rear wheel. Now for drag racing, I want to take that out, because what I've found is when you're launching off the line, you've got that little bit of play on that and it just gives you that point over whatever second where, you know, at the end of the strip, because you might just like get a bit of that and then it starts working. Sorry for the actions, but anyway, I'll show you anyway. I'll turn camera now and show you and see what's what. Right, here we go. As you can see, this is the lockup mechanisms. This is like the plate that you normally have on, and you'll normally have your springs compressing that in. But as on this application, you can see just about inside the hardened buttons. You know, little just on the edge. We'll just try and zoom in. Just on the edge. We want to go there. Just there. They're the hardened buttons which are on this back plate, and those buttons are going to be harder because these arms push against it. Whatever weight you put on these arms, like this has got a lot more weight than that, and that's just got like a bolt and a nut. This has got two 1 gram washers on as well. So what happens as that spins, yeah, these will fling in harder quicker because there's more weight on it, and push. So I've got 1, 2, 3 on the heavier weight and 1, 2, 3 on the lighter weight. So they'll push first because there's more weight on it, and then later on they will fling out, which is only minute of a second between it. But that what happens is, as I say, this spins quicker. As this spins quicker, whichever way it goes, they push against the clutch and push it harder. Basically just push like that sort of thing. It goes off rotation, and because it's on this inner bit, it's attached to the inner bit, it'll go whatever the gearbox speed is going, which would normally be the rear wheel speed, instead of this bit, which would be the engine, because it obviously goes off the crank sprocket there. So that's pretty much how it works. Other people know how it works are far more better than me, and probably have a better way of setting it up. But I've set it up like that because when I was trying to set it up light, I was having quite a few issues with I was basically putting heavier and heavier washers on, and basically got it back to the standard springs anyway. So I put the standard springs in, and I just had this application to work later on down the track, because believe it or not, when you get right up the revs and you've got the rear wheel really going at some pace, you do get some slip at the top, which you normally wouldn't notice, but it all adds to a little bit of time on the end of the strip, so that's why that's done. So anyway, now I'm going to put the casing on, and then we've got an inner casing which inner bit that comes off on the casing, so you can inspect this, and you can actually even take all the clutch out, put a new clutch in without taking the main casing off, which would also mean you wouldn't have to drop the oil, because the oil level wouldn't be up as high as this bit. And this oil sump, even though it's shorter on one side, it's a 2-inch sump, but it's 2-inch on the other side, where the other side on the standard sump might have only been about that narrow, and then on the side, that was on the exhaust side, it would only be about that narrow, because the exhaust will go under the sump, but on the other side it could be pretty massive, sort of thing. But this is even all the way across. I've measured the oil, it's 4.5 litres of oil to the sight window, and it basically means you just cover the total, all the sight window, that's 4.5 litres, which is a ZZR14 take standard. This takes a little bit more now because of the oil cooler I've got, and the oil cooler, obviously, because of this pipe work, it goes around, it takes a bit longer, and there's a bit more oil in there. So I think it's just under 5 litres this is now, so it's nearly got another half a litre in it, which will help with cooling anyway. It just means you're using a lot of oil compared to some of the Thou bikes may only take 4 litres or 3.5 litres even, but this 14 takes quite a lot of oil. And I must admit, the H2 takes a similar amount of oil, but because it's got the supercharger in as well, then obviously there's got to be more oil needs to go up around the top of there. Got a bum fluff over there. Yeah. Right, okay, that's it for now. Hi. Well, you can see the clutch cover is on. Now this is the cover that goes on this bit here. This has an O-ring all the way around it, 3 bolts, and that goes on, and that is your quick access removal. So when you remove that off, all this still retains oil underneath there. So it's always handy to have it on the side stand when you're doing the alterations to the clutch. And because I've got an adjustable side stand, I can lower it right down, so it's, you know, almost lying on its side on the side stand to be able to work anywhere on the clutch side. It's just handy if I do have to take the whole cover off. But I just thought I'd show you that. Quite easy. Roaring Toys. I got it from America, Shunts Racing America, which is that sticker. Now I'm not sure, there may be a UK supplier of these. Someone's told me there's somewhere down south. Now whether that's where they make them, if it is, I am quite surprised I had to get it from America, but other drag racers will know probably better. But there we go, so that's on now. I've got cap to go on, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put oil in it, and I'm going to put some additive in it to help with the slippiness of the gearbox and the engine, to make it, you know, a bit freer. So that's quite good stuff, really. Mates of mine who's been using them in the bikes he works with as his engine builder. He wouldn't sell anything that he doesn't think is good, so there we go. It wouldn't promote it, so there we go. I'm going to get that. I'm not going to name it just yet, because I want to check to make sure it works, and then I will name, and if it does work, if it does make a big difference, then the only way we can tell really on the dyno, because he reckons he gained 6 bhp on the dyno on one of his bikes, which is quite a lot considering, you know, you change your exhaust, you might only get 6-7 bhp. So just to have this stuff in, additive in your engine, well, it's not additive, it's just a thing to help slippiness, but it does not make the clutch slippy, which is a bonus, because you do not want the clutch slippy than what it is. Anyway, speak to you shortly. Goodbye. Hi, it's now, well, 10:05. I just managed to run the bike up, and straight away the oil pressure gauge shot up to 80 psi on idle, and then it dropped to 60 psi as the oil got a bit thinner. Now I'm going to let the oil settle overnight and recheck it in the morning, top it up, and see where we go from there. But so far, first signs pretty good. So that'll do. It's been a bit of a long afternoon and evening. Obviously I couldn't rev the bike for too long. Well, I didn't rev it. I couldn't have it running for too long because it's getting late and the neighbour's pretty close to us next door, even though we're a detached property. But anyway, that's it. And I will speak to you again shortly. I'll post this video after this one, and then I will probably do another one, possibly for, well, we'll do one for round 3, which is Sunday now, so it's next weekend. So I need to check that there's no leaks, everything's all right. Oil already is ready, thingy, because it will need topping up, because normally I put a little bit in the oil filter, but I didn't this time, so the oil filter is going to fill up and the oil cooler pipes are going to fill up again. So the probably at least another half a litre to go in it. So we'll just see where we go from there. And you know, that's it. I've got to stop now. The place is a mess, so I'll be tidying up again tomorrow. It's a bit late to do that now, especially when my legs come loose, and each time I lift my leg up to move it, it comes off basically. So I'm trying to hold it. So speak to you again shortly, and thank you for watching. As you can see here, this is the standard shock, but it was revalved for a bit more drag racing, and the bottom screw is the rebound dampening. Now that was basically coming to its end of its life. I've had one made by Hagon, which at the bottom again you see the screw there at the bottom near my little finger, which is a rebound dampening. We don't particularly need any compression dampening because we want it to go down quick anyway, just come up slow. They have said look, there's that much rebound dampening there that I could lock the shock up, so basically it will not come back up. So don't particularly want to do that. So it's going to be, once it's fitted, it's going to be a bit of a trial and error of whereabouts I want the compression or the rebound dampening to be, if you know what I mean. So we'll do a bit of testing, but I'll show you now in the video of what I had to do. I had to take the rear shock out. You just see from the bottom here, it's out from here and it's out from the top. And I set the wheel where I wanted it to be when I'm, you know, how low I wanted it to launch. So it's going to be at that height from the underside at full length. And then what I had to do is lift the rear rail up, lift this up to where I want it here, and then that works out the travel I wanted. You have to measure that on eyelet to eyelet on the shock. So that's what's been done. So this shock should be pretty much close to that where it is now, and when fully compressed it should not touch the underneath. That's the idea. So I'm going to go and fit this now anyway.